The seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, here we go. Monday night. The Boyce'S bus revs back up, rolls back in, and picks up Jonathan Boyce and all you beautiful people at home as well. It's all good. It's all fun and games. Still the close season, but we're getting that bit closer to the big kickoff. Jonathan Boyce, how the devil are you, my man?
Oh, I'm good, mate. I'm good. I've got to say, after last week, I made you a promise, Russell, that business was all going to be done by the 31st of July before we play Aberdeen at 4:30 on Sunday.
You did say this,
and
yes.
It is looking like that promise may well being fulfilled with the business Celtic have done over the past 7 days. And by the looks of things, it doesn't look like they're done yet.
No, Jonathan, it doesn't look like they're done. And no, they should be, by the way. We are competing in Europe's Premier competition this year. I say it all the time. I don't think we can ever underestimate, how big a jump, how big a gulf there is up to that. And we're going to be talking about another player that's been linked with us recently. The rumours seem to be getting a bit stronger. I've already told you who I'm talking about. And maybe if we were all ITL, if we were ITL, then we would know a wee bit more about that than what we sadly do. Jonathan, at the start of every show, we've got to do a bit of a roundup of affairs. We did a brilliant weekend there on the Boyce'S bus. Friday night, Ross Muir for the Endless Celts. What a legend. Sound as anything. Then had an impromptu lock-in. That got messy. I need to stop thinking this is the pub. It's like an online version of the pub. I'm like messaging the troops after, anyone wants to jump in, just jump in. And, I did that many a time, Jonathan, when I owned the old boozer, as you know. And then on Sunday, we got to talk about Sunday's show, mate. Sunday with Regan Stevenson and Mark Kearney. Is that right? I've been involved now in doing this podcast game, for a wee while now. A wee while, Jonathan, I would say. I'm pretty well versed on what's a good show and what's not. And that's not me being all smart about it. It's just a fact, right? I've hosted fucking over 100 on this, and I did over 100 on another pod in the space of 18 months to 2 years, right? So I'm pretty sure when I'm watching, I know what's good and what's not. I am telling you that will be a 1,000 views show. Give it a month to 2 months. There's no pressure on them to do that, by the way. It doesn't make any odds. But I definitely think that Regan Stevenson and Mark Kearney, the way they dovetail It is a top draw show. If you've not been watching the Sunday Blether, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you're missing out. Like, I'm telling you right now, you are. That is ideal at brunch time on a Sunday. Albeit it was a wee bit late this weekend, Jonathan. I forgot all about it, to be honest. As much as I'm bumming it up now, I woke up and forgot all about it. But honestly, it genuinely is a top draw show. A big thanks to all of you who've been watching over the weekend, and always do. Big thanks to all our subscribers. If you want to hit subscribe, remember it costs you $5. And if you want to share it, that's always helpful. And if you want to become a member, like the likes of Kenny McArdle, Balls to the Walls, Chunks in My Trunks, Paul McFarlane, Phil McGinley's all have, then it's $1.99 a month. It's optional. It helps support the channel. It keeps like me keeping the lights on, you know. It's allowed us with stuff like that, being able to get half decent microphones and things, Jonathan, a better webcam. And these things have all organically generated by the channel. It's not me just coming in and chucking money at something and trying to make it better because of that. It's all just been generated from just the popularity of the show. So thanks to each and every single one of you. Gazmic86 says I'm getting you subscribers. That's awfully kind of you guys. Good to have you on the bus, mate. Welcome aboard. He's now saying shout out. I mean, I'll be honest, it's not like I will shout out, you know, like I'll bring up comments and that, but it's not like happy birthday to Gazmic.
I feel like that first statement was really just to get a shout out. I'm gonna get you subscribers. Shout out.
Shout out.
That's part of the terms and conditions before I go fetching these subscribers, boys.
I like it, guys. I like your style, mate. I'm getting you subscribers. Shout out. I can't argue with that. Brilliant to see so many folk on the bus already. That's us at the magical number of 67 watching live, Jonathan. It is an exciting time. The international boys are back, Jonathan. Seeing Kyogo in the old training kit, it just doesn't get any better. Oh, before I go any further, look at this. Margie McCarthy right in there. YouTube member, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, and thank you so much. Really, really kind. Now, Monty, watch it in the comments, son. Watch it, mate. Honestly, I've got to warn him every now and then, otherwise he just does.
You rascal him.
You got to keep him on some sort of fucking proverbial lead, Jonathan. No, man, no one's cracking.
We're not bringing that one up, anyway.
It's not one of those shows, mate. International boys, though, Jonathan, returning to training. I thought it was brilliant seeing Maeda bombing about at 100 mile an hour already. Kyogo back in the training kit. These are the names that you just think, what a fantastic warm season it was last year. A team that we all identified with. The ethics were brilliant. They've got all the right ingredients in that team for it to be a team that goes down in Celtic history. It's like one of those ones that you just loved. You know, they don't split opinion, many of them, if any. They're just all likeable, and they've all seemed to come with the right work ethics, the right sort of attitude, Jonathan, and the right application. And seeing them all training, I just think it gets exciting. It's 27 days to the big kickoff. Celtic have some finishing touches to add to what is looking an impressive squad. I'm not going to go over carried away, though. I think domestically, yes, I think this squad is extremely strong. I do want us to make a fist of it in Europe this year. And I'm not saying we should be qualifying straight out of the group. No one's got a divine right to do that, Jonathan. There's not one team, may I add, in the Champions League that has a divine right to just have an expectation on them that you just qualify no matter who you put out. But I think it would be a really nice sign of Celtic really going in this right direction. If we believe change is in the air at Celtic Football Club right now, which I think a lot of us do, and I think highlighted by this transfer business you're so convinced to be done by the 31st of July, there's a real sense of calm as well, which is so unusual for us at this stage in the summer. I mean, obviously last summer was completely the polar opposite. But see, in general, Jonathan, this level of calmness in summertime pre-season at Celtic isn't the norm either. Usually the forums and the blogs and various podcasts and things are a wee bit getting edgy at this point. And it's, all the players returned and no new faces yet and things like that. That's normally the narrative, mate. And I'm including I'm including past title wins as well, obviously, because we do tend to win the title. Now, what's actually interesting here is there's no reason for panic. There's no cause for alarm. We're all pretty happy with the business that was done in January in particular. We're all been happy with the speed that we've managed to get CCV and Jota over the line and at the expense. I think that, whilst it's not about the valuation, I try to say this all the time, it's about us being able to put a meter, Jonathan, on. Like you're putting a meter on what Celtic's ambition is, though, as well, by the value. That's what I think encourages us. No one's wanting Celtic to spend money wildly on CCV and Jota for the sake of it. But I also think you get a wee hunch as to how serious Celtic mean business when they're spending £6 million on 2 players, right? That's how I think you look at the valuation side of it quite a lot. We've obviously brought in Alexandro Bernabei as well at £3.75 million. I read a fantastic, interesting take by an Australian journalist whose name's Argentine journalist. I'm just used to saying that now. Argentine journalist whose take on it is he doesn't think he'll make the World Cup this year, but he thinks he will probably be in the Argentina full squad by next year if he keeps up his good form at Celtic, and he thinks he'll become a £20 million player.
Huge.
That is huge. Now, Jonathan, what have rounded off this little banner with is there's still some finishing touches to be added. That is definitely true, Jonathan. But we've got time on our side now. Whilst you are very confident we're going to have everything done by the 31st of July, and it's a brilliant positive message to put across. I love that. It's not necessary, though, that we have to have our business done by then. It would be helpful, but not necessary. Time is very much on our side for the actual amount of work that's needing done to this squad, Jonathan. We can cherry pick a wee bit here.
Yeah, oh no, definitely. We do have all the time in the world this summer, which is so far removed from how it usually goes. We're normally biting our fingernails right down to the last seconds of a transfer window just to find out we're signing like a third or fourth player of the summer window. As this season we're already up to about 5, 6 already, something along those lines when you include the re-signings of Jota and Carter Vickers. So we've got plenty of time to get the business done. I think Postecoglou, in my gut, tells me he wants it all done before the league season starts. However, if a player was to become available, because we can flip this a little bit this time around this summer, Russell, we can look at it now. There's other clubs you've got to bear in mind that are now having to negotiate very tricky Champions League qualifiers. And we all know from experience with Celtic, when you don't make it in to the Champions League, there's every chance you may well have to sell one of your players to balance the books. And that is another opportunity that Celtic may well have come August, as the opportunity to then look at somebody that would have been otherwise unavailable. So it's one of those ones where Celtic are in a brilliant position in terms of going into August, where they can actually seize on other teams' misfortunes to further strengthen their squad. For me, I think, as I keep saying, I suspect he'll have all his main business done by the start of the league season. I suspect if he's going to be buying anyone in August, it'll be because of a situation of circumstance that's presented itself to us, or it'll be in a case that somebody's came in and blown us out the water and went in to replace a player that we weren't expected to replace, something along those lines. But I think in terms of preparations, Postecoglou strikes me as a very methodical man who likes to have things all planned very, very far in advance. And I think flapping around on the last day of the transfer window is not Ange Postecoglou's style. I don't expect him to be doing last-minute deals on the final day of the deadline and just for the sake of looking busy. He'll leave that to other clubs to fanny about and try and get a last-minute deal. But certainly in terms of improving the squad, we've seen a good few coming in. I think there's going to be probably another 2 or 3 more, I suspect, before we start the league season up. I know there's one we're going to touch upon later on. But even looking at other positions outside of that one that we're going to discuss, you're probably looking at, for me, I think we're still talking about another striker coming in. I know we had the Jordan Larson chat about it last week. If you like the fantasy transfer, not really gathering much traction, unfortunately. The bus doesn't seem to be the start of too many of the rumour mills in the Daily Record or anything like that. But they seem to tease on any story they can. But nobody's reporting Jordan Larsson to Celtic quite yet. And
That's because they're scared of it, Jonathan.
Well, maybe,
Why would the Daily Record promote a story with a brilliant player joining Celtic? No, they don't want that.
And so I think, you know, it's going to be another striker for me, and I think there's going to be a centre half as well, because I still expect Julian to be gone by the close of the window. It doesn't look like he has a future with us from what we're seeing going into this season. So, I mean, in terms of that, I think, you know, if you bring it on, probably another 3, would you say, Russell? Is that what you would say is probably how many Celtic would be looking at?
Well, Jonathan, I thought we were going to take a wee dive into the comments today right away. Just right off the bat, Charles Smith. Good to have you with us, as always, Charles, because Charles makes a very interesting point. I quite like this. So he's saying 2 more buys, Jonathan, 1 loan to buy and 1 free Larsson house. Right now, we like the Larsson, like we do. And I think we convinced a lot of folk. I got a message I got Franny Carty of the Endless Celts. I know they're cashing in on the Monday success, Jonathan, and they're quite right to do that, by the way. Obviously, Monday night's a good night to go, guys. I'm glad you have woke up and decided to do the same thing. Go past 9 o'clock one more time, and I'll be at that Ross Muir's door, though.
We're not starting a Monday Night Wars podcast.
But I think the argument about Larsson's a very interesting one. As a free transfer, he's very affordable. Now, we did debate it at length last week. For me, commercially, etc., it all makes sense, right? We debated that. Yeah. But 2 more permanent buys and 1 loan to buy. Now, Charles isn't specifying the positions. We're going to go into that in the next topic when we talk about the player we think there's a rumour slightly growing with. But 2 more buys, 1 loan to buy, Jonathan. I think that loan to buy that Charles is referring to, I think that's where you would see your 31st of July deadline broken. I think that's one of the examples you're giving. I think that would be when one of those players comes up that you go, oh, wow, is he not in the, let's say, for example, he's not in the EPL 25 yet, he's top. They must be trying to offload him, and they can't offload him, so they've not included him in the squad. We could maybe get on a loan to buy. That sort of thing. I think it'd be a market Celtic should be very much spending August investigating again, Jonathan. Coming Carter Vickers and Shota are 2 outright successes. And when I seen we were getting loan to buys in both of them, I can't deny that I was a wee bit, well, we'll see how they do. It's brilliant, but it's a patchwork job just for getting to the end of the course this season. I hadn't really took on board at the time the significance of this option to buy malarkey. And I think that's really opened my eyes to, whoa. That's actually not the worst way for a club like us to be doing business each summer. Not across the board, but at least 1, if not 2. I think we could get away with that. Now, the model is now there. So I think Celtic would be folly if, come the 31st of July, we just shut the door altogether. I know you weren't quite saying that. But I think we should maybe look, if we were to fulfill Charles's request, get your free transfer in, Jordan, and then do your two purchases. If you're going to do 2 purchases, make them all your focus right now. If there's free agents available, we think, and it doesn't need to be Jordan Larsson, there maybe be more out there. I'd be certainly looking for them if I was playing Championship Manager right now, Jonathan. They'd all be there in the player search. If there is those, let's focus on those just now. But let's get to August, Jonathan. And I think we start putting that wee one eye out again. Not because they're going to be a position that needs filled. I want all of that shit sorted, right, by the 31st July. The permanent buys, the positions that needed covered. But let's spend that August trawling through the market, and let's see if we could get someone we may not otherwise be able to afford in, who might just sprinkle a bit of that magic dust. Someone who could come in and just be maybe of a level for any position on the park that may be, that we couldn't normally get, but we might be able to get on that loan to buy scheme. What do you make of that as being a strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the loan to buys, you've got to be looking in that sort of market. Now, it's a no-brainer after the success of it last year. And, you know, to be fair, even looking further back, Celtic have had success doing that before. You've only got to look at Fraser Foster. He was a loan to buy option a long time ago. But it's a market for some reason, Russell. Celtic don't seem to have gone into as much as perhaps they should have done over the last, 10, 15 years. Generally speaking, when we've done loans, a lot of them have just been just that, loans. And I never see the point in those sort of signings, because you're going to end up in the exact same problem you were in when that loan expires, and you're still going to need to fill that position, whoever it may be. And there's always that guarantee. Well, it's actually two ways of looking at it. The loan could work out extremely well, and then you end up still not being able to have the player, and you still have to send them back to the club they came from. Then you can't afford them because they've had a good season. Other clubs are interested. Or the loan can be a total flop, and then you're still back in the same position where you need to fill the position. So I'm not actually overly keen on loan signings for the sake of loan signings, unless it's box office. They've got a couple of exceptions over the years. Robbie Keane, Craig Bellamy, for example, are two exceptions, I would say, on that part. But generally speaking, I'm not keen on bringing players in on loan, particularly young players with no option to buy them. I think you need to be looking at that as a club, and it's a market that, as I say, I think Celtic should be looking at and dipping their toes into a bit more, because it makes sense both from a football perspective, and it also makes sense, from a boardroom perspective, in the sense that if they've already got that option to buy clause in, that player has a good season like Jota just had, for example, like Carter Vickers just had. If you didn't have those options to buy on them, how much money would Celtic have then had to fork out on either of those players? I can guarantee you it'd been more than 7 million, 6-7 million pounds. You wouldn't have been getting them for that sort of price at all.
I think it's a great point. See, one other thing that you're touching on there, Jonathan, whether they have a good season, whether they don't have a good season, I also think it refocuses the player that's joining on loan. Too often we've seen, Jonathan, players join us on loan, but it's good to be here, but it's not going to define me. It's not going to shape my career.
But they're halfway out the door before they even started.
So we don't want that. But what you actually seen with guys signing with this option to buy, the players got to agree to that being the deal that they're going. They don't just get farmed out. Players have far much more power than that, Jonathan. So if they've agreed to doing an option to buy deal, that means they're going with a slight refocusing than what other loan players join with. They're joining with, I want to do well at the very least there because I've got a guaranteed 4-year deal at a big club like Celtic, right? Mm-hmm. Also, the alternative is if I do really well here, they're going to need to make sure they cough up the dollars because I can still turn it down. I'm not. Celtic might have the first option to buy, right? But the player's not obligated to sign if Celtic make that option. Benfica, in Jota's case, for example, were obligated to accept the offer because the terms, the bid, was already prearranged. But the actual wage side of it isn't. So for the player, for me, it goes, well, that is you now working for something at a, and hopefully the attitude I get, or the impression I get, is that both Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers very much worked towards earning contracts at Celtic, to be totally honest with you.
It's a season-long trial in some ways for these players, that opportunity for them. And, particularly when you're looking at guys like Carter-Vickers and Jota, who weren't fancied at the clubs that they came from, and you use Carter-Vickers probably as more of an example, just purely because he's been out on loan so many times already in his career. He's only 22, 23 years old, and I think he's been about 5 or 6 different clubs, I think, on loan already, which is frightening. I think, that's just a proven fact as to why loans for me don't really work without that option to buy, because whatever's been going on with Carter Vickers when he's been going out on these loans previously, it's not helped him break into the Tottenham team. And, either it's been a case that he's done well, which I know actually probably has, when he's went out on loan to these clubs. It's meant that they've been out priced of actually able to afford them because he's done well and he's been on loan previously. Whereas I think, the fact he had that option to buy with Celtic has obviously given him something to work towards, as you rightly say. And it also means he knows he's got that option there that Celtic can trigger. If he does well, he knows he can get a move from a club that's clearly got no time for him and not going to use him. And I think there's so many players that are going to be in a similar position to Carter Vickers that you'd be silly not to be looking, at more players like that from a Celtic perspective. And then you're right, there's going to be a lot more options for Celtic come August in that sort of market, purely because, as I've said, you're going to have teams that don't make it into the Champions League that could end up looking at getting rid of players that are still going to be at good clubs, by the way, that will drop out of the Champions League. And then you'll end up also with the players that don't make it into the Premier League squads that, again, will be more than adequate for Celtic to do a job on them, as well. So it's certainly one to have a look at and one eye on in August. I think at the moment, Postecoglou's focus is going to be more on wherever he's been scouting, because he's been scouting everywhere, I would imagine, for the last 6 months. He's got eyes everywhere, and he's probably now looking more towards the sort of perhaps bigger markets that Celtic can't normally compete in, would be where they would come in probably later on, as you rightly say, and that's probably where you'd look to maybe bring in one big name if possible in August. But again, if the right player doesn't come available, then Postecoglou's not going to care, because his business, as I say, I think will be done by the 31st of July, the key business anyway.
Yeah, well, exactly, mate. Exactly. I mean, it's not about, as I say, August, we've got to, we can't ever afford to shut doors completely. I absolutely agree with you. He wants the jigsaw puzzle of his squad and his first team for this season. I agree with you. He wants it done for day one of the season. Doesn't always work as easily as that, but incredibly this year, Jonathan, as I said at the top of the show, none of us seem panicking that it won't. Big shout out to Brown Warrior as well. He's became a member on the bus as well tonight. 2 members already, mate. It's unbelievable. And thank you to all the new subscribers as well. Thank you. Anyway, Jonathan, we'll crack on, because it's not just about when these deals get done. It's who, Jonathan, who and what area of the park. What's the point in just signing players because, we've signed players before the 31st of July? Why? Why have we signed them? Who do we need to get in? And I think we do need a holding midfielder. I just went blurry there. Well, no.
No, you're okay.
I think I went blurry at mind. But Souza is getting stronger rumours again, Jonathan. Now, he seemed to be the one out of, a few players that we've been linked with who was the most unlikely, I would say, 10 to 14 days ago. He's one of the ones that's coming with his higher price tag, a bit like the Schalke 04 centre-half. What's his name? Thiak. Is it Thiak?
Yeah.
That's a good. Thiak, isn't it?
I think so. I'm going to go with Thiak. I'm going to run with that. I'm not
right.
entirely sure, but we'll run with that.
We'll run with that, mate. But yeah, I mean, these two guys were sort of that higher price range, that sort of £8 million mark, and you're going, oof, quite a lot for Celtic. I don't personally think it's a crazy amount of money to be spending on a Champions League campaign. In fact, I think it's perfectly normal and is way below the Champions League average getting spent on a player. But we're not a regular team there, which is absolutely fine. So that's fine. But I think the Souza rumour gathering speed excites me, because what we're wanting, Jonathan, if we're going to be bringing in a holding midfielder now, for me, Ideguchi, I think, was brought in to sort of play there. I'm not entirely sure. I feel a bit sorry for him. I still think he's going to get a heck of a lot of chances next year. I don't think it wasn't like he wasn't given a fair crack last season. He was at the wrong end of a bad tackle. The injury seemed to linger, and then the team had a title to win, so we're gonna focus on that, aren't we? Winning the title, not pandering to whether it be Chris Julian, whether it be Ideguchi getting game time. We can't afford to do that, Jonathan, when there's a 40 million league title. Then I think that slate for Ideguchi right now is the exact same as when he joined the club. But if it were me and I'm looking at that next level of competition that we're entering, we're gonna need to have a look at the holding midfield role. I think Callum McGregor can do more for us going forward. Now, I think he won Player of the Year last year. I don't think there was many complaints about that, Jonathan. I would like, though, our holding midfielder to be a wee bit more physical. It's just one of those things. Brown Warrior, I'll bring up his comments since he's became a member. He's saying Ideguchi was brought in to replace Scott Brown. I've seen him saying this a lot. I mean, he's not Scott Brown, right? Like, he's not. I don't think he was brought in to replace Scott Brown. I think he was brought in to maybe play in a similar area of the park, but I don't think he was brought in to replace Scott Brown. But I definitely think Ideguchi's got a fair crack of the whip, Jonathan, to get a regular slot in the midfield as much as anyone. But I definitely, when I look at his profile, I look at McGregor's profile, I look at, if it's going to be Hatate, O'Reilly, Turnbull, you're looking at it, you're going, where's the physicality in midfield that we might need a wee bit of, Jonathan, in the Champions League to counter what is going to be? Remember, for all the technicians we've got, they are going to be better technicians.
Yeah.
Fact. All right. I appreciate Brown. It was his role at football. I appreciate it's his role as a footballer, but there is no danger he was brought in to replace Scott Brown. I don't agree with your point on it, mate. No one has been brought in to replace Scott Brown. Right? No one is. It's a completely what he brought to the team as a player and a leader is just it's different. He wasn't brought in to be Scott Brown's replacement. And again, I know, Brown, now probably you're just nitpicking because I've said about Ideguchi, but look, it's not about being over physical. The players I've just said to Jonathan there are not of any sort of physical profile. Callum McGregor being the most tenacious out the lot, and yet when you look at him, he's hardly a bodybuilder, And I think we do need that balance. We need that balance in there, and 100%. We are going to need that with more physicality in there. Now, Brown the captain and Brown the player. Brown is an extremely physical player. Ideguchi doesn't strike me as that Brown warrior. But anyway, we could go tit for tat all night, but there's no danger when I look at Ideguchi. He's ever been brought in as a replacement for Scott Brown. I don't know where that comes from, but everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But I don't think they're even remotely similar in terms of how they play the game, and I will find out. But I don't think so. I think we need someone with physicality in there. And it's brilliant bringing up examples of players that are under 6 foot, Jonathan. We could all do that all day. The fact of the matter is, Jonathan, the midfield options Celtic currently have need bolstered with more physicality. Yet to be seen with Ideguchi whether he can or not. But the Souza rumours excite me, Jonathan, because he seems to be of a profile and he seems to be of a bit of a reputation. He could enhance the side in both of those ways. Both is bringing a lot to the table in terms of ability, but that physicality that I'm on about as well.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting sort of signing, and really to touch upon it, the last time Celtic got out of the Champions League group stages, and it's why I'm probably most excited about a move like this, is you remember we did have a powerhouse midfielder that played the last time we got out of the Champions League group stages, and his name was Victor Wanyama. And really, we're looking at somebody of that sort of mould, I think, again, because Wanyama was critical the last time we actually managed to get out of the groups, because he does bring something different. He is able to use his strength and physicality to good use. And he was actually a good footballer as well. Let's not say we're just bringing in just somebody that can just put their muscles about a wee bit and push people to the deck. There's a bit more to it than just that. And I think Souza offers that sort of physical presence that I think we are badly lacking. And I think in some ways we were even showing up domestically, against Rangers at times. I think when they've got the better of the midfielders, because they were willing to get more in our faces than we were able to handle at times. And I think that's something we need to look at, not just for the European campaign, but also domestically as well, to make sure we're keeping them at our arm's length. So I think it's definitely one to be excited about as Souza coming in. You're also looking, just to touch back on Ideguchi, I think time will tell with Ideguchi. I think, perhaps because of how good the other Japanese boys have been and how quickly they hit the ground running, we're forgetting that he's had to do a whole, come to a whole new environment. He's had to adapt, from coming over from Japan. For most people, that would take, a bit of time. I think we've just taken it for granted because of how well the others have hit the ground running. And it might just be a case that he's just taken slightly longer to find his feet in a new country and a whole new culture to him. But I have no doubts. I think Ideguchi will turn out to be a good signing for Celtic. Whether or not he'll turn out to be the physical presence that we're needing, I'm not so sure. I do think we're going to need another one in that role, and that's where the Souza signing really captures the imagination. I think it's the one, if you were to ask most Celtic fans now as to what they want Celtic to sign in terms of a player, it's going to be someone of the Souza mould. They're going to want somebody that can be that combative central midfielder that's going to get in there and win back. You know what I mean? It's like
100%, mate. I agree.
Because you're looking at it right now, and you're probably right. Callum McGregor probably is the closest we've got, and he's a bit more of a sort of terrier, I would say. Whereas we're wanting a little. He's more like a terrier, and he'll get himself about the foot. But we're wanting something that's going to have a bit more.
He's like me after 6 pints.
That's it. All bark and bite. But you know what I mean? It's like we're really wanting like a German Shepherd or something, and they're wanting something with a bit of physicality.
A bit of intimidation. It's never let a miss.
Exactly. And I think, when you're playing Champions League football, we're not going to be able to outpass teams like, Man City, Liverpool, whoever it may be in the groups. There's going to be games where we're going to have our backs to the wall at times. However, Ange Postecoglou tries to set the team up, and we can argue about tactics all day long. But, if you're looking at players that you need for games like that. You are going to need players that are ready to get into a battle, and sometimes you have to ruffle a few players if you're going to win games like that. And that's exactly where a guy like Souza fits in. And I think that's exactly why a lot of Celtic fans are looking at it and thinking, okay, that would be a huge signing for us.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the competition, Jonathan, when we're, no one's going to kid on. We actually, the Boyce'S had sent scouts out, to go watch him last season. That's not happened, right? But what I can tell you is, when you look at the players that are linked, the clubs, that are linked to this player, that all of that sort of recruit that we should be competing with. I want to see Celtic competing with Ajax's, Fenerbahce's, PSV Eindhoven's. Now, this might sound really, really normal, but it's the facts of the matter are that these are the clubs we should be competing with again. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. What I will say as well, just finally on this Scott Brown, to put it to bed, Ange Postecoglou never managed Scott Brown. There was no Scott Brown hole in Ange Postecoglou's team to fill. Let's get that absolutely clear. He was never going, how am I going to replace Scott Brown? He never had Scott Brown to replace. So, that is just, it's not what it's about. Whether it's Scott Brown, Jock Brown, Craig Brown, I don't care what Brown you want to talk about, Brown Warrior, any Brown. It's about getting in someone who has a physical presence in midfield. Jonathan can see it, I can see it, and if some of you can't see it, that's fair. Everyone looks at it from a different prism. But I can assure you, why are we looking at Souza in the first place if Ange isn't interested? And why is Souza twice the size of Ideguchi?
Well, I think when you look at physical signings as well, Russell, people are saying Postecoglou doesn't do physical signings. I've seen it in the comments. But he signed Giakoumakis, last year. And he's an absolute unit. If he's not a definition of what physical is, then Jesus Christ, I want to know what people are doing in the gym that are coming up with these comments. Because they'd have to be absolutely ripped to their shreds. It should be in the WWE if they're thinking Giakoumakis isn't built like an absolute unit. And Carter Vickers is the same. Another absolute tank of a player. So, for me, I don't see the problem in adding another tank into the midfield. You've got a tank at the back and you've got a tank up front. It makes perfect sense to me to have a tank in the middle, as well. So,
Jonathan, it's so true because the Giakoumakis signing, let's be honest, the same people would be telling us right now, no way is he an Ange player. He's not an Ange Postecoglou type. He is. And trust me, so Souza be just better sign now, Souza. It'll be great fun. But absolutely, we're going to the Champions League. Celtic will be a more physical unit, and it'll be Giakoumakis playing up top in Champions League next, Jonathan, and causing utter chaos. And I cannot wait to see it. Mark Kearney, who was telling us all yesterday he was 2'9" on Regan's Sunday Blether, he says if Ange wants a physical presence, he should look no further than himself, Judge Kearney. Well, fair enough, Mark, absolutely.
Just keep him off the vodkas until after the game, Mark. I think that's all we'll need to make sure we're doing with you. So until you've had a couple of vodkas and you're on the deck, son.
And Brown, I totally get Souza's nowhere to be seen, but we're talking about players coming into the club, mate. Come on. You know the conversation we're having here. We're deliberately talking about players potentially read the banner. There is rumours getting stronger surrounding a deal for Souza having serious potential. That's what we're talking about. Shithouse midfielder required. Ryan Taylor rounds it off nicely on that one. And I think the thing is with these debates, Jonathan, it's exciting because we're all having proper debates about exciting conversations, Jonathan. Not ones where we're going, holy fuck, see if we don't have, oh my God, we've only got 12 players. What are we going to do the first day of the season, the 31st, Jonathan? Who are we going to have at centre-backs? 3 youth, a youth player there? None of these are the conversations now. None of these are the conversations. The conversations right now are all extremely exciting about how we enhance positions we already have players in that have won as a league title or that have came in. We're looking just for we're looking to strengthen, Jonathan. It's all very optimistic and positive around Celtic right now. I could get used to summers being like this, mate.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's such a refreshing change from what we usually are. The moment I felt a lot more relaxed about it this time around, the moment Nia Beaton left the building, I thought, thank fuck, we're not going to have him centre-back first game of the season. I was like, that's one thing we'll never have to worry about again with Pete on the door. But no, in all seriousness, you're looking at it. Postecoglou has clearly proven over the time he's been at the club that he is a planner, and he likes to have things in order, nice and sharp. And I don't think under his reign you're going to be finding Celtic scrambling about trying to do last-minute deals. I think that's just not how Postecoglou works. And I think the board are fully on board with that as well, and are making sure that he's getting all the right tools to get the players that he wants, and that he can get them all in as early as he possibly can. And for me, there's absolutely no doubt Postecoglou is looking at a type of holding midfielder that's going to bring something more physical to the team as well. And I think Postecoglou is somebody who can see what he's actually needing for his team. I don't think he totally buys into a certain type of player, and he wouldn't go for anybody else. He's not somebody who's just going to dismiss a player on physical attributes. Postecoglou signs players on what he thinks is going to be best for the team, and he also signs them based on what he thinks has got the best character. I think that's why he's always kind of put it across. And if those two boxes are ticked, you better believe Ange Postecoglou will bring them in, regardless of whether they're 6 foot or whether they're 5 foot. If he thinks they're going to do the job, he's going to sign them. You know what I mean? So it's one of those ones that with Postecoglou in charge, you kind of know he's not going to play favourites or have a certain type of signing. I think he would look across the board and bring anyone in as long as they kind of fit the criteria of what he was looking for.
Yeah, he wants balance in his squad as well, Jonathan. I think he's proven that time and time again. He does want different sort of fits for his team. I don't think he's got a set. Has to be like an Ange Postecoglou. Oh, that's an Ange player. That's an Ange player. That's not. I think he's got broader horizons than many people let on, Jonathan. Now let's look at another area, Jonathan. I think we're all a wee bit glad to see this, if we're honest. Volleyball and goalie getting heavily linked today with Reading. We know now, Jonathan, his stock has fallen so much that the £3 million we invested on volleyball and goalie, we're not going to recoup any of it. Let's be honest. It's a case of you're going to just be releasing him to another club to get him off the wage bill. I think everyone's in acceptance of this. Does it frustrate me? Yeah, because volleyball and goalie was signed using the money that was paid for Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney was someone that Celtic developed themselves as a football club. Organically developed Jonathan to a level that he was 25 million cash up front, despite Arsenal's best attempts to pay it in installments. We triggered, I think, as well in it a 20% release. What is it? Sell-on clause. Sell-on clause as well.
Summer from the Rumours as well.
Could be, mate. It could be, and I think it actually does highlight the fact that we're all buzzing. Celtic signed another left back now to compete with Greg Taylor. Yeah, rather than just going all out at that time and getting a fucking good left back, Jonathan, with £25 million, Celtic hummed and hawed and brought in a £2 million Greg Taylor, who I would have agreed with that investment, but then he had to be coming in as the backup, Jonathan, so he could develop at Celtic with a proper bona fide first team one in there. Volleyball and goalie at £3 million. I just think they shat the bed a wee bit, Jonathan. They're not reinvesting really good money that the club's brought in properly.
And face, wasn't it, really? That one to the supporters. When you see somebody like Tierney disappearing, who was obviously a well-renowned fan favourite coming through the youth, and really feeling like one of our own for so long, and then you end up, getting insane money for him. And really, from a Scottish football perspective, £25 million players don't come around very often. It's a record signing out of the Scottish Premiership. And Celtic should have been signing somebody certainly of a good stature to replace him with, and not just spending a few £1 million on him. I think they perhaps took advantage of the fact that Neil Lennon was in charge at that time, and he was maybe not the type of guy who would stand his ground as much as a Postecoglou type figure or a Brendan Rodgers might have done. Yeah, and it's
because that's not actually who Lennon is. It's just because he knew he shouldn't have been in the job. I think he knew his Christmases had came at once, and he was a bit of a yes man. I think first time round he would have pushed a wee bit more. Right?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think Lennon was just probably happy to be employed and was quite happy to just let the board make a lot of the footballing decisions for him, and he would just kind of get on with it, which probably ultimately led to his downfall in many ways the second time around. But you know, if you're looking at it, there's absolutely no doubt about it. The Celtic are selling players for £25 million. If they're then expecting, you know, Greg Taylor to come in, fine. If you want him as your backup, fine. But you've got to understand Greg Taylor is, you know, the best third choice Scotland left back. You just sold Scotland's second choice left back, has to play right back because you know, the captain plays left back for Scotland.
Yep.
You know, to accommodate the captain. He's that good to you, and he can actually play the other side anyway without too much problems. You know, if you're going to bring in the third choice Scotland left back to replace a £25 million player, you're always going to be up against it. And then Bolingoli was just, it was just a bit of a mess. Signing him, he came in. They were hoping they were just going to hit the jackpot when they didn't actually need to, because if they'd spent wisely in that window, it wasn't one they needed to gamble on as much. They had the money there. You know, this wasn't a case of they were having to just scramble about and they'd only got peanuts for Tierney. He was in the last year of his contract and he decided he wasn't coming. You know, they've had plenty of time there, plenty of notice probably that Tierney was probably for the off, and then they've ended up taking the cheap option, and Bolingoli ended up being a total disaster, for being completely honest. I mean, I remember watching them I remember watching the Europa League in Lennon's first full season when they were in the group with Lazio, etc. And he was pretty much just running it and just leaving so much space. He wanted to play left wing. I don't even think he was wanting to play as a left back. I don't think he identified himself as a left back. But I don't think any Celtic fans will be losing much sleep over him going. And it's certainly not one the club is going to make much money from. You can only hope that they learn the lesson from the Bolingoli mishap and as to how they went about business in that window. But I fully expect that hopefully Celtic will have learnt that lesson and that won't happen again for a long, long time. But if you're asking me about Bolingoli, I think he was one of these players we do need to get off the wage bill. And then there's obviously a couple others, you know, I think as well. I think for me, Mikey Johnson, I think his race is probably run in a Celtic jersey for me. Whether he just goes out on loan and we just have to take the hit of just getting him off the wage bill to begin with, I think that would be a reasonable option if that's where it comes down to. I think Soro, I think he's still at the club as well, Russell.
Well, this is it. I mean, the Egyptian Kings came in because he's took the conversation where I wanted it to go, Jonathan. I mean, it's so important fundamentally that guys like Bolingoli maybe earning, I don't know, upwards of 10,000 a week, maybe 15,000 a week. We've got to cut our losses eventually and go, right, I'm really excited at the likes of maybe Souza joining. But obviously, I've shot us on the reported money. These guys are costing top dollar now, week to week balance sheets, Jonathan. We've got to balance the books a wee bit. And whilst we know there is money there, we need to be ambitious as well, because our revenue will only increase the more ambitious that we are, Jonathan. These are facts. It's proven. But what I will say is we also need to go, there is no way we can do that recklessly. And what I mean by that is if there is a money going out the door unnecessarily on guys that aren't going to get near your first team, then we've got to make big calls here. Now, it's a shame we don't seem to be pulling in money for the likes of Rogic, Beaton. I don't understand it, but they both had a year left on their deal, but they're gone. Maybe Beaton's was an option of a year, but Rogic definitely had a year left. You know, I would rather get 500 grand from Jonathan than nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ajeti, I mean, now you're looking at, is it even worth holding out for a fee on him? I'm not sure. I think that might be 5 million gone. The Soro deal, I think he cost us £2 million. You would have thought if we couldn't get him out on loan, Jonathan, the wages took over, then we're not marketing him right. That's one thing I would say. So I think Soro does have some sort of potential that would be appealing to other clubs than you're just telling me Celtic were the only team that were interested in him. I find that hard to believe. I actually think that one we could maybe do something with. Mikey Johnson, I think he's probably struggling this season, John, though I think he'll keep up.
No.
How much does he affect the wage bill, though? And is he handy for the homegrown department for the Champions League? Probably, because you've got to have, obviously, the homegrown players, and then you've got association players and all this. Johnson will probably hang around, actually, a wee bit for that. But I do believe we do want to start, Jonathan, now refocusing a wee bit on outgoings again and looking at guys like Ajeti, Bolingoli, and that I don't want it to turn into bingo with them, Jonathan, every summer, you know, when their name's going to come up as potential sales. Barkas, we only managed to get a loan. He's conceded 4 to Queen's Park in that time, Jonathan, already, incredibly. Apparently he's blaming the fans recently, but I think the source from that was SM Media. Not reliable, mate. Not reliable. So I think that quote may well have been made up. I think they're full of shite, to be honest. So there you go. I would like to see us, though, trim that wage bill a wee bit, Jonathan, and it further allows us, obviously, to be more expansive when it does come in into bringing a player, if we can get that done maybe sooner rather than later as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We definitely need to be looking at offloading a few, and I think the Egyptian Kings probably hit the nail on the head with a few of them. They are obviously as well, we're expecting Julian to go because it doesn't look like he features in Postecoglou's planning. I actually quite like Julian. I thought he might have got a chance going into next season, but if you're not going to use him, you need to get him off the wage bill because he'll be on big wages. He was £7 million player. It came from League One. He's not going to be on cheap wages. So if you're not going to be using him and you've got no intention of using him, I think he's a big one to try and offload in that sense. I think with Ayeti, it's a bit of an interesting one, Ayeti, because I could see him holding on to Ayeti until such time as he gets another striker in, whether that be Jordan Larson or whether that be somebody totally different. But I think Postecoglou's got to be looking at this and thinking he's got Giakoumakis and Kyogo. Both of them were injured for half a season last year.
Yeah.
You've got to be looking at that and thinking that could happen again this time around. And if you're only down to one striker and then Ayeti's your backup, you know it's not a great place to be. But at least he's a natural striker, if you like. I think Ayeti was actually trying to buy into the way Postecoglou was wanting to play. I think he was actually looking all right against Betis. I think when he pulled his hamstring chasing down the goalkeeper, which wasn't like Ayeti. If you remember back, I think he was showing a lot more commitment to it. Now, I'm not saying Ayeti's going to have a future at Celtic by any stretch, but I think in some ways Postecoglou might feel like, okay, I can maybe do something with him if worst comes to worst domestically. I can maybe do something with him until such time as I get a replacement striker in. But
cuckoo land, honestly, cuckoo land. You are honestly like not you, but the thought of Ajeti at any point, Jonathan, making an impact for Ange Postecoglou's second season at Celtic, where it has grown so fast that team has developed. He's left in the dust, mate. We're going to be playing Champions League football. Albion Ajeti could not be further out of the picture, in my opinion. I would be gobsmacked, literally gobsmacked, if we see him feature in any competition other than the League Cup this year. He's not cut out for this. He has been, and no offense to him, I wish him all the best, but he's not there, George. There's comments coming in giving him a wee bit of respect here. I'm going, wait now, he's nowhere near it, man. Nowhere near it. He will not make it, Jonathan, and he will have not 1 minute will he play in the Champions League. Right? He will not play a minute in Champions League football. I think he'd be doing very well to get a minute or two in the SPFL. I think the League Cup's his best bet, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think domestically is where he's going to get played if at all he is utilised. I think the only reason Ayeti might not be one of the first ones out the door this summer window is, one, I'm not entirely sure who'd be looking at him, but also I think Celtic need to make sure that they have another striker source, so they've got a third choice strikers. I still think Ayeti could do a job domestically in certain games. Whether or not Postecoglou would rather, if he had to be in a position where, Giakoumakis and Kyogo were not available, whether he then just decides he'd rather just tweak it and put Maeda up front or try something else. James Forrest has obviously played there in the past under Rodgers and Lennon. Would probably be down to whether Postecoglou really has any faith in Ayeti or not. And I guess that's a follow-up question to go back to you. If you're in a position, Russell, where Kyogo and Giakoumakis are not available, Celtic have decided or not been able to source another striker in the summer window, does Ayeti get a game, let's say domestically, we're not talking Europe here, let's say a domestic league game, Celtic Park or away from home, would you go with Albion Ayeti or would you tweak the system slightly and compromise putting somebody that's not a natural striker up front there?
Yeah, Abada would play up front ahead of Ayeti, in my opinion. I think Abada's already ahead of Ayeti as a number 9. I see no, Jonathan, he's not part of our See, phase 2, season 2, whatever is meant to be, when Ange really gets the bit between his teeth. That team impressed me a lot last year, Jonathan. If they're going to impress me more this year, trust me, it won't be with Albion Ayeti starting any game. Honestly, I've got more of a chance of starting ahead of him, I think, next year. He's mince, mate. Utter mince. He's got no chance. I wish him all the best. I'm sure he's a good lad. I'm sure he is. And I've nothing personal against him. But he has got absolutely no chance of cutting the mustard at a never stopping Glasgow Celtic FC, mate. No.
No, I mean, to be fair, I think it's all hypothetical because I fully expect Celtic will bring another striker in personally anyway. I was just thinking more, there is a possibility he could get the odd run out domestically, if we were in a bad position. But I don't, the way the board have been acting this summer and getting bit deals done, I suspect a striker will be earmarked by Postecoglou as another area who'll want another body in, because I do feel he would rather have another natural striker to go in there if Giakoumakis or Kyogo get injured, like what happened last season. I think he'd rather keep Abada out wide rather than having to compromise on one of his wingers, or Maeda for that matter, having to come in and play through the middle. So I think there will be another striker probably brought in, and I think when that does happen, that is when the green light will be given on Ayeti to vacate the building. I think in terms of the other positions, I think Mikey Johnson, you make a point. I think it's four homegrown players I think they have to have for Champions League. I think it certainly used to be that anyway. So he probably does fill your quota as one of those players that, kind of just be in the squad. He's probably not going to play, let's be honest. But, outside of that, I think Mikey Johnson's time at Celtic is probably numbered. For me, really, I don't feel he's really developing as we'd hoped so, and I just can't see him forcing his way into the out wide wing positions at all. But as I say, they might choose to keep him hanging around. If anyone could potentially resurrect Mikey Johnson, it would be Ange Postecoglou. But for me, I think that race is run.
Me too, Jonathan. Anyway, we'll go on to something else that's been getting rumoured, not quite officially announced yet, but rumoured. And it seems to be Everton taking that 4th spot in the old Sidney Cup, Jonathan. It's not quite Inter Milan, is it? But Everton, the Tim Cahill effect, Phil McGinley, I'll need to give kudos to for coming up with that. That comparison in the old WhatsApp group chat today. But I think Sidney Cup, Everton, is it what the fans are after? I mean, the only team I've ever went to see in England, Jonathan, is Everton. And I love my experience going down to watch them at Goodison Park. I was talking about this, in fact, last week, weren't we? I like Everton as a club. I think I understand why fans this side of the continent might be underwhelmed, but if it's going to be like a Tim Cahill sort of led Everton, maybe, you can, I don't mean it on the pitch. I mean, like, if he was to be part, like, in and amongst it, being like the sort of Everton ambassador, I think there's a huge scalability there for the Australians as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's one that will hopefully appease the locals in that one. It's certainly not as glamorous. It's an Inter Milan type match would have been for Celtic's point of view. When you're looking at Everton, I actually decided to have a wee bit of homework on this one and see when last time Celtic played Everton, Russell. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know the last time Celtic played Everton?
Don't think they ever have.
I don't think they ever have in a competitive game. The last time they played them was in a friendly in 2006.
Oh, I didn't know this. No.
You didn't know that? Would you want to have a guess of the score?
So it would be Gordon Strachan Celtic. This would be going into Strachan's 2nd season if it's the summer. I'm going to guess it was the summer if it was a friendly. Ooh.
Guess the score and a goal scorer or goal scorers.
I think Celtic would have won the match 3-1, and I think Magic Zaravsky would have scored.
Oh, I mean, you're right. Celtic did win the match. Even back then, they were still winning beating the English teams in the pre-season friendly.
We love beating an English team, mate. We'll beat them at the Sidney Cup too, guaranteed.
I guaranteed we probably will. It was actually a 1-0 win for Celtic on that day, and it was Aidan McGeady goal with about 15 minutes to go when I did my research earlier this evening.
Ironic, because of course he went on to play for Everton. In fact, the game I went to see Everton, Aidan McGeady was unveiled at half-time. There you
Wow.
go. Aye, that is true. That is very true. It's true. But Aidan McGeady was unveiled at half-time that day. I didn't realise we'd played. I've got no recollection of that at all.
No,
Who scored?
aye.
John McGeady scores. It was just a 1-0 win.
It was a 1-0 win at Celtic Park in 2006. I don't think that's what they've marketed the Sidney Cup on, by the way. They think they're like, oh, well, let's have a look back at that friend. That was classic. let's do that again.
I wouldn't have thought so. But I would definitely think for the Sidney Cup point of view, I mean, it's a money spinning tournament, Jonathan. It's going to generate the club a hell of a lot of cash. There's rumours of £6 million we were getting no matter what. Everton, if they're agreeing to do this, whilst a lot of their players, I'm sure, even though they seem on, to the naked eye to be pretty shit, Jonathan, they'll probably still have 10 guys at the World Cup, because that just seems to be the nature of the beast. If you're an English Premier League team, that you've got 10 players that go to these big tournaments. But for them to still then agree to do that, you would have to imagine there's a financial reward from their perspective as well that's pretty high, because I can't see really their other connections. So that tells you that the tournament's definitely got some sort of pull, Jonathan, some sort of draw. And it's obviously going to be worth a couple of quid to Celtic this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer really to go and do the tournament, particularly when the money that's going to get played out, and then on top of that, it's going to be a big fanfare, a big love-in for Postecoglou, who, let's be honest, is the biggest draw of that whole competition, is Ange Postecoglou. But then you've also, as you rightly say, or as Phil McGinley rightly said, I think Tim Cahill will be somewhere involved if it is indeed Everton that end up coming in as the replacement for Rangers. Then I would fully expect Cahill to be making an appearance and being involved as well, and getting the sort of Australian feel good factor into the grounds in Melbourne, Sydney rather, when that is played. But looking for it from a Celtic point of view, it makes absolute commercial sense to be taking those games on, and we'll enjoy beating Everton again, just like we did in 2006. Bring it on!
I like that, mate. I like that. Yeah, I think it's easy to get too downbeat about it. Everton's a club with a bit of tradition, Jonathan, a bit of history down in England. I think it'll be quite a refreshing change, mate, to play them. So we're looking forward to that. And final talking point of the night, Jonathan, it's just a wee throwaway one, to be honest. We covered the hour already. It's done, mate. That's it. Another show in the can, mate, in the tank. It's done. But we will talk about this as well. Obviously, English clubs are now looking. I didn't realise there'd been trials last year, Jonathan, with some top flight clubs of the safe standing area.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. I found it out today. I'm not going to claim I was doing research. I was just reading Google, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like just reading news articles, because that's what normal folk do. I don't call it research.
There's a lot of talk about it with Liverpool, obviously, because that's obviously going to be a sensitive issue for them. So, it was in the news before they started the trials.
Yeah. Is there room now for a debate as to whether Celtic should have an expanded standing area section where it currently is, or even a second one?
I think there is always room for debate on that, because let's face it, that standing section is never empty. It's absolutely never empty, and I think there's a big appetite, for standing areas in stadiums across the United Kingdom nowadays. So I think, if you were looking at it from a Celtic perspective, then absolutely, if you decided you were going to make a bigger standing section, then there would be more inclined fans to take that option up. You only have to look at places in Germany like Dortmund that has like that huge standing section behind one of the goals, doesn't it? And it just makes such a big atmosphere, big impression on you when you're actually watching the games. You're like, oof, that looks tasty. That looks
unique.
It just looks like a proper sort of atmosphere that's kind of building there. And I think if you were to do that at Celtic Park, you get big games, and you've got Rangers or a European game coming to town, and you've got whatever it ended up being, if they did ever expand it and had like the whole Lisbon Lions stand, this is also me getting very far-fetched and imaginative. But if they did ever did a full stand like that, could you imagine that behind one of the goals, like every Celtic fan being able to stand at the wall of noise the players would be greeted to in that sort of situation? Chris makes the point about 15 to 20,000 safe standing in the stadium. I think that would be more than feasible. I think there would be more than enough appetite for that. I think, in terms of getting into that corner, it must be very, very difficult to actually get in and amongst the standing seat ticket at all at Celtic Park, just because of how small the actual section is. And I think it is time Celtic probably looked at expanding that, Russell. And I think it just adds a bit more uniqueness to the stadium if that was indeed something Celtic were to pursue. I don't know what your thoughts are on. Is that somewhere you would like to go, stand in, be a part of?
Well, I think Ryan Taylor's kind of probably tuned into how I'm thinking as well. Yeah, I think there's plenty of scope for another few thousand at the very least, Jonathan. I think there's a massive appetite for it. I think they're the hottest tickets at Celtic Park. I think everyone wants it, a wee bit. Even people I know that have been season ticket holders, Jonathan, but have then stood in the standing section, are quick to tell you they were in the standing section last week or whatever. It's weird. It obviously is the place where the greatest amount of atmosphere is generated on a most consistent basis. I like this from Ryan, though. I don't like the point, but I like his way of thinking. I think this is exactly my thoughts on it. I've got a feeling that Celtic probably already asked this question. I've got a feeling this will be another one that is responded to with utter negativity. I wonder if that's what's held this up, and that maybe Celtic actually want to watch even managing to get a standing section at all, be the first club in the UK to do so, because realistically, we're pushed back all the time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, for me, it'd be brilliant to see that area, I think, further expanded round it becoming the stuff of legend. And it becoming, that area of Celtic Park. Obviously, they talk about the jungle, Jonathan, and things like that. You could be really looking at your 2023, whenever it would be, like sort of equivalent, of going, there's an iconic area of the ground. Monty came in as well, talking about, the redevelopment of the main stand. I couldn't agree more with that, Jonathan. That's been there nearly 100 years,
Yeah. So let's do anything with that, because it's a listed building. I'm never entirely sure what the story is behind that. Yeah, because I would imagine that it must be something Celtic have looked at before, and I think they have. And it's because it's a listed building, they struggle to build on top of it. I believe is the story. I'm sure somebody in the comments will keep me right as to whether or not that is indeed the case. But it certainly makes absolute sense that if it's feasible and it's possible to go ahead and do that, then Celtic should be again looking at that as an option, because yet again Celtic have sold out their season ticket numbers, and God only knows how many there is on the waiting list. On top of it, there'll be thousands upon thousands on it, I would have thought. So it would comfortably sell out as far as I'm concerned there, and it just completes the stadium, doesn't it? Because it always has that sort of look as almost being not fully completed when you've got the main stand that's a wee bit smaller than the north stand. So it would be nice to be able to bring that second tier in and really kind of stadium just look as if it was a fully completed stadium going forward, if indeed that is a feasible route for the club to actually go down, because from a board perspective, again, it's a no-brainer, makes money. We don't know why you would consider it.
I totally agree with that, Jonathan. More safe standing at Celtic. That is the message that the Boyce'S brothers are telling us all today. Mark Kearney, though, says it's not listed. Monty says it will not be listed if we knock it down.
Well, that's one way of getting around it, if it was.
Which is always a point as well. It has been, though, another brilliant Monday club. Jonathan, I'm back to work. It was 5 days off, obviously COVID, but then it crossed over with annual leave. So I was only really off half day. And I'm going to need to go do a return to work tomorrow and all that nonsense, I was off for 5 hours, mate,
Back to the day job tomorrow.
It is back to the day job. I like the idea of this being my job, Jonathan, but I think that's around 20 years down the line. A big thank you to everyone in the comments. The comment section has been absolutely lively tonight, by the way. Woofed. So many comments coming. Keep doing that, by the way, because it does make the show take over. A big hello to our new members and, of course, to our new subscribers, any new viewers. If you want to share the show, share the channel, share the life out it, by all means, feel free to do so. If you just want to come on here, have a beer, watch the Boyce'S Bus. We will be back Wednesday night. Phil McGinley's Bustalgia, World Cup 2006. I watched all the goals today, Jonathan. And it was. I didn't like the kits. I didn't like the hairdos. I It was all right, though. It was all
Good
right.
tournament, that one. Good tournament. And I believe a certain Swedish striker finally gets his moment against the English.
He does, mate, and I'm sure Phil McKinley will be talking about that. Ladies and gentlemen, have a brilliant night. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining. See you all later.
Yeah.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.